think of people who are in poverty as not at the bottom. I think of them as the foundation of this country. We're the ones that the moment money comes in, we're spending it right out. We have an outdated system of how we are measuring poverty. This is how rich people succeed in the country all the time, is by subsidies, giveaways, tax breaks, things that they call luxury items.
I ran across Maya Contreras a couple of years ago when she was stumping for the Biden-Harris ticket. And there was something about her tone, informative tone, that stayed with me. It struck me. And I began to follow her on Instagram and I followed her on Twitter. The girl is the truth. It turns out that she was then advocating for the issues that are now the platform of her campaign, as she's now a candidate for District 12, a congressional candidate for District 12 in New York. Those issues are her journey. Those issues are her story. And for that reason, she is my first guest of Soapbox Sunday 2022. I'm so glad she said yes. I also called in some backup for this particular interview. You know the face, you know the name. Gary Carter Green of YouCantBeatBlue is going to be on to help me co-host this wonderful episode. Gary, meet Maya. Maya, meet Gary.
Hi, we've chatted on via Twitter.
Yeah,
but it's good to see both your faces together here now.
Yeah. Maya, Jermaine and I have been talking about you for so long, and we're really excited. I'm excited you're involved in this race. As so many great candidates, you really draw where you stand on so many of the issues from personal experience, specifically growing up. One of your big issues is housing justice. And that comes from your own personal experiences, being raised with a mother who at times were living below the poverty line. There's a piece on your website. It's a picture of a diary entry, which just really got me. And it says, 2 days ago, you're 10 years old. And the writing is the writing of a 10-year-old girl. 2 days ago, our landlord said we had 3 days to come up with $1,000 or we have to move. We have to move to a storage unit if we get kicked out. That was your reality. I'd like you to just talk a little about how being raised that way and the struggles of your mother and father influence where you stand on issues today.
Sure. So I was actually raised by a single mother. Both my mother and father have college degrees. And for a long time, that was equated with automatic track to success in America. But that really hasn't been true for many decades now. Yeah. And then I will also say that my mother was working several part-time jobs to try to be home for us when we got home from school. Unfortunately, that didn't always work out. The jobs that she was working were the kind of jobs that are still offered today, low wages, minimum wages, that still don't make ends meet. So at one point when I was writing that journal entry, I already knew the stress of what my mother was dealing with. We already knew that we were dealing with economic insecurity. We knew that we were dealing with housing insecurity. So at that point, my mom she made literally $1 too much to qualify for food stamps at that moment. Seriously, because my mom came home with an envelope in her hand and she was crying. She was going to lose what is now called SNAP benefits. Oh, yeah. So my mom had to move money over from trying to pay for housing to pay for food, which many families in America do. Again, they make decisions on which they have to prioritize. So because of that, my grandfather had a storage facility in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And my mom she had the key to the storage facility, didn't tell my grandfather that we moved into it. Oh. Because I think she was embarrassed that we had gotten to this point. So during that time period, we were very lucky. There was a toilet in the facility, but there was no bath. No shower, no refrigerator, no stove, none of that. We lived on the floor. We lived on top of blankets, as my mom tried to continue to work to try to move us out of that. What I saw during that time period, and what a lot of people in America who are disenfranchised or who deal with discrimination, what you start imbibing during that time period as a child, you start seeing how things work in the country. Sure. And you especially start seeing how it works for people who are growing up in poverty. I started seeing that the notion, if you just work hard enough, and that you could pull yourself up by your bootstraps was a lie, because I saw how hard my mother was working, and I knew that wasn't true for us. And then I also saw that while there are some financial benefits, they were being culled back, cut by our government, trying to move people away from it, saying there's a cultural dependency, but that's not what it is. I saw at that time, at that young age, that this country was apt to blame people and not the policies for being poor, instead of the policies that were keeping them in poverty. It is so hard for so many families to navigate these systems, to move out of poverty because there's lack of access to opportunities, to access benefits, things that are owed. And so I started learning that early on. So I would say that was the first time that was really informing my politics and policy at that age of 10.
You're talking about the working poor.
Yeah.
It's a capitalist society that we live on. They are making a lot of money on poor people's struggles in this town. I mean, this country. Do you have solutions as to how to bring the immediate community that you're running to represent District 12 out of that? Do you have anything that can possibly address that, like day one? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things when you're dealing with these type of issues, you're always thinking about how could this work better? How could my community be helped? How could myself be helped? How could other people be helped? And one of the things that I started noticing, and it's something that I would say Ruth Bader Ginsburg said that really helped informed how I go about policy, which is, she said, I wish that Roe versus Wade wasn't just put up in this big wall as one big piece of legislation, instead of being codified, instead of being put into law in pieces to make it strong. So to me, we have to approach policy in a way that builds brick by brick by brick, so that it builds this foundation in a stronger way. I think of people who are in poverty as not at the bottom. I think of them as the foundation of this country. We're the ones that the moment money comes in, we're spending it right out. So one of the things that is a day one solution for me is the way we measure poverty in this country is completely incorrect. We're leaving so many people out in the cold who are experiencing poverty, but aren't considered poor by federal guidelines, right? We have an outdated system of how we are measuring poverty. When we know that rich people get giveaways all the time.
Yeah, that's how they stay rich.
Yeah, exactly. I remember I was doing contracts with a woman who runs a couple of orchestras, and I went with her to the bank, and I remember I had just paid $50 to get a new stack of checks. While we were there, she needed new checks, and they said, oh, that's on us. That's for free, right? Just because her money makes money. This is how rich people succeed in the country all the time, is by subsidies, giveaways, tax breaks, things that they call luxury items.
But
they
that's
try to,
welfare too. Any help from the government
that is all welfare.
Colored differently.
It's public assistance. It would be considered public assistance. So So to me, Democrats unfortunately have to do 20 different things all at once. We have to combat narratives that have been formed by 100 years. We have to educate the public to understand why we have to go about policy in the way we are. But I will also say this, we do have to approach things in a creative way. And that's why I said on day one, we have to change how we measure poverty. And the reason why we do that is because then it would give an actual picture of what is needed in our country. If we redid it to calculate how we actually live now, then we would see that there are so many more people are beneath the poverty line. Then that would make more people eligible for SNAP and for subsidies, for housing, for this. So that's what I'm saying.
Well, we saw it last year, how close people were to, the brink, especially during the pandemic. People that were doing well pre-pandemic, but all of a sudden that one paycheck pretty much turned their lives upside down. And all of a sudden they were needing the assistance they used to look down for other people receiving.